Okay, we're going to start by taking a look at the outside of the flower first. So if you look at this flower, you're probably looking at it and thinking, oh, there are 6 petals there. There actually aren't. There are actually only 3 petals on this flower. 3 of them are petals, and the other 3 are what are called sepals. Sepals are on the outside of the flower. So if we take a closer look, this big piece right here, this is an actual petal. These 2 on the outside are sepals. And you can see that the sepals kind of overlap the petal a little bit. That's because when the flower closes up, the sepals kind of come together to keep everything in. So looking at this flower that hasn't bloomed yet, the greener parts on the outside, and you can see there are 1, 2, 3 of them, those are the sepals. So they're pretty long and pretty narrow, and on this, they're very green. Most sepals on flowers are going to be a little bit greener than the actual petals themselves. On the Asiatic lily, the sepals are still pretty similar in color to the rest of the petals. Once they start to bloom and open up, there's not as much green there. So now the next thing we're going to do is take off our sepals. And if you look at the flower, you can see sepal, petal, sepal, petal, sepal, petal. They go around in alternate order. So we're going to take those 3 off. On the Asiatic lily, they come off pretty easily. On other flowers, they're going to come down a little bit further, and you'll have to more like peel them off as opposed to just picking them off, which is what I'm doing. Okay, and if you look at the sepal up close, like I said, it's a lot longer, it's more narrow than your petals are going to be. So now we'll take a look at those petals. We have 3 of them. Okay. So let's go ahead and take one of those off. You can see it's got that nice deeper color in the center with some of those dots. It's also much wider than the sepals were. It's not quite as long. It doesn't come down as far on the stem as the sepal does, so it doesn't need to be as long as that does. Let's look at them next to each other here. You can see there is some difference in size and length. Not so much. The sepal is a little longer, but for the most part, the length is similar. It's that width that's very different. Take those off. All right, and now we're left with the innermost parts of our lilies. Take a quick look there. And we're gonna look at these little oddball things right here. These are called stamen. Stamen are the parts of the flower that hold the pollen. So when an insect or a bee or a bat or a bird or whatever it is lands on this, they're going to rub up against it, and that's how they're going to get to transfer the pollen from this plant to another Asiatic lily. You take one of these off, kind of rub it around your fingers a little bit. You can see it leaves that orange pollen wherever it touches, and as I'm dropping this onto the table, I can see it's kind of dusting off onto the table. So it doesn't take much disturbance to get this to move around. So it's pretty easy for bees and other really small insects to kind of pick that up and move it around as they go. Now I just took one off, but there are 6 stamen on the lily, just like there were 3 petals and 3 sepals altogether to make 6. There are 6 stamen here. So we're going to take our stamen off. Okay, and now we are left with the absolute innermost part of our lily. This whole thing all together is called a pistil. It is where the pollen needs to go in order for the plant to be fertilized and to reproduce. So the whole thing is the pistil. This very tip right here, I can't get the camera to focus very well, but the very tip right here, you can see it has a little bit of that orange pollen already stuck to it. That's called the stigma, the sticky stigma. That's where the pollen sticks to so that it can move down and pollinate the flower. Down here at the bottom is the ovary.